beyond the forbidden.
Whether we choose to call it screen memory, telepathic mind control, technological mind control, or virtual reality scenarios, the entities involved in the abduction phenomenon employ masterful illusory capabilities. And I don't think the importance of this fact can be stressed strongly enough. It must affect all of our thinking and our research when it comes to these alien-human contacts. In Ted's experiences, for example, there were several occasions where such masquerading techniques were employed, and I could spend, as I said, the rest of the morning just dealing with these, and I'm going to be making very brief references, and hope you maybe want to read about the rest of it in the book. One instance involved the appearance of Ted's deceased grandfather on board a craft into which he and his grandmother had been taken when Ted was a young boy. I think I spoke about this a couple of years ago when I was first working on Ted's material, and I didn't identify that this was Ted's story I was referring to. The scenario involved persuading his grandmother to engage in a sexual activity with an non-human entity, and when she refused to do so, saying she had only ever made love with her husband and he was dead, the aliens produced the dead husband. In another instance, Ted watched a scenario that surely was not occurring in normal reality terms. I call it a virtual reality scenario, and this began shortly after he had heard a very quiet sound like helicopter blades. And in this ongoing event, after the helicopter blade noise, Ted watched as a human-looking entity dressed in military clothes popped through the ceiling into the room, holding a young child that was very, very similar to Ted's appearance at the same age. I believe now that the reported and confirmed details in all of these reports are strong evidence against accepting consciously recalled alien encounter reports at face value because of the illusion capabilities, because of the screens, and because of the virtual reality technology that we have witnessed being manifest by these entities. I believe that if we build our theories on such information, the consciously reported information only, we're building on sand, on illusions that the aliens create for us, and I think to confuse and mislead us. Now, this is not to say, however, that all alien encounters are virtual reality events, because there is also plenty of very strong evidence for the physical nature of many of these encounters. So to be perfectly objective, the definition of abduction would have to include any event or scenario that is generated externally for the targeted person, whether it be a physical encounter, a virtual reality scenario, or a telepathic contact. In 1991 and 92, when Ted and Barbara began a series of regressions, it popped up in these events, this scenario that Ted had recalled as a story, but a very different version of that basic story emerged. A version in which he went through what can only be called a horrific experience, in which his original body he perceived as being killed and taken away, and his essence, for lack of a better word, we could call it soul energy or whatever term one would like to use, was contained temporarily in a black box, placed on a counter, and transferred shortly thereafter into a cloned copy of young Ted's body.
If these aliens are taking all these humans and these children, and they're consuming them, people, it would be so many, it would be just thousands. The world would already be in a state of panic. So here we go with more deception, and it also shows just how brilliant some of these alien programs are. They created an ability to replicate a human in a fast, rapid method called a clone. And this is why another reason they're after the soul is because they're after the flesh of the original body. But if they create a clone and make it realistic, they have to put the same memory back in there. They did that to me, and I have witnessed them doing it to others through these odd-looking, strange-looking headphones that they put on you. And it's all they enter this information. It's almost painful sometimes. It's going into your brain so fast. But they created the human brain to be none other than a biological computer. So it's just like downloading something on the computer. It just works on the same principle. But then they take these souls. They've managed to get our souls and put them in little black boxes. I've seen them do it. They did it to me, and they have done that to them. I saw men, women, children, beings hung up on meat hooks and slaughtered, and their body parts where they were dismembered, and their body parts were packed in crates, and these crates were then moved into small UFOs and were taken out to alien colonies for them to feed upon. Some are reptilian, some are what they call the Greys, the Nordics, what have you. Different people tell us that they're all different species of aliens coming from different parts of the universe. I don't know originally where they came from, but I do know this. I have seen many of them on the same ship together. I have had Greys come and take me through the walls of my house and into a ship, and I get on there, and there's reptilians there, and then before they're done with me and I'm on a table, be it having awful things done to me, a Nordic will come in and do something. And, you know, I just can't buy that they're all different species that are against each other. I just don't buy any of that at this point. I think they're all working together.
Become a member on Patreon to get full access to all exclusive content. A few of the perks is the full-length ad-free video version of the interviews, face-to-face interviews, bonus shows, and behind-the-scenes footage. You will also receive the video interview way in advance before the audio-only interview gets dropped on all platforms. Sign up and become a member today for only $3 a month. The link is in the description.
I am old as dirt and crazy as a loon. So here we go.
Well, you're from the South just like I am now, so.
Well, I thought I detected a little
North
slowness in your talking.
North Louisiana, West Monroe, Louisiana.
Where?
West Monroe, Louisiana.
Good old stomping ground for me.
Yep, and I've been to Texarkana, worked at them paper mills, power plants, all over around there.
Yeah. Did you know I lived for 11 years in Shreveport?
I know you know I did not.
Okay, I did. And that's where I met Karla and Barbara Bartlett.
Wow.
I had a neighborhood abduction that not only was I taken, but my neighbors were taken. We were taken in a group, and that happened there in Shreveport. And that's what brought Karla into my life.
I was wondering.
I used to drive over to West Monroe to a metaphysical bookstore and do psychic readings on Saturday. I did that for a number of years. I knew a lot of people in West Monroe. Muchies. Have good memories.
Do you remember where that bookstore? Because we don't have any good bookstores anymore.
I don't think I don't think there's one there now, to the best of my knowledge.
But it's crazy. That just to know how, somebody I've been following, huge supporter and admiration of Dr. Carla Turner, and with your story and all that, and just to know that you're only about 100 miles away from me, you know,
Yeah.
like where you were from. Um,
If
what
you, hey, if you go on the the podcast that I've done in the past with Stuart Eglinton, we do Masquerade of Angels. It's on Spotify. It's on several others. That's the only one I'm thinking of at the moment. But one of those podcasts is about a story called the Mary Henry story, and it's one of the most different things. Nobody has ever really, in my opinion, or that I'm aware of, come up with anything similar to that story. But it was verified by Mary Henry herself, Barbara Bartlett. But what I'm saying to you is that abduction took place on the second floor of the Holiday Inn in Monroe there, West Monroe.
hmm,
They took me right off the balcony.
did you know that, Fringe?
Ted, is this the one where you had someone call into a radio station who observed it as well, or is this something different?
No, this is a different story. Uh, Barbara Bartlett lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and she had a very good friend named Mary Henry. And I never met Mary Henry. I saw her at a distance one time when I was there at Barbara Bartlett's for a few days when we were doing regressions. And Mary Henry came by and stuck her head in the door and said, "Hey," and then she left. So I saw her physically, but I really knew nothing about this lady. Uh, but Barbara did mention her periodically to me because Barbara and I were friends for years before she died. But at any rate, when I was taken out of that hotel there, I was taken down into the earth. And down into the earth, there were, I was put on a gurney with a little bit of a sheet over me. They had stripped me of my clothes. And on a gurney next to me was a woman crying out. And she turned and looked at me and she said, "Ted." I said, "What?" I didn't really recognize her. And she said, "It's me, Mary Henry."
Hmm.
And Mary Henry and I apparently were taken, what I would say, into hell. We were taken deep into the earth. There were swine characters involved in what was done to us. Uh, but they were able to, with some of the machinery they had, they were able to dismember some of our limbs. And I actually, uh, they took off my right foot right above my ankle and held it up and showed it to me. And I wasn't feeling anything, but they were doing this. And so after this abduction, and I wake up later and I'm back in the motel room, uh, I'm thinking, well, maybe that could just been some ridiculous dream. Uh, but then I get back to Shreveport, and within a week, I get a distress phone call from Barbara Bartlett in Tulsa. And she said, "Ted, Mary Henry has come over here. She's extremely upset because she said she was abducted with you and y'all were taken into the bowels of the earth. And she said they removed some of your limbs. And she said, Mary Henry says her feet are different now. They're not the same." And I had just come to notice that my right foot was now larger than my left foot.
Mm.
And I still have that today, and it's noticeable. I can show it to you. But we saw down there swine-looking characters with hoof feet walking around. There were a lot of people on gurneys, different places, people crying out, begging for help. It was like a living hell. And it was very hot, very steamy, like you may have been deep into some cave that was maybe, I'm just guessing, say perhaps close to some volcanic lava or something that had the whole place somewhat heated, but not where you were burning. And there was an overseer, and Mary Henry also saw the same character as she described in Barbara. There was an overseer that kind of on a platform overlooking all this and barking orders, and he had reddish tinted skin, very leathery looking. It wasn't red like fire engine red. It was more like Native American red, Indian. Uh, he had ridges on his head, and he had ridges that kind of stood up that would make you think there were horns. I don't remember, or at least not at this point, I don't remember seeing him walking around with a pitchfork. Uh, I don't remember seeing a red tail. If I did, I've forgotten it. But that was the Mary Henry story, and it happened in Monroe, there at the Holiday Inn.
Wow. What, you know, Dr. Carla Turner, talks about the screen memories, um or the virtual reality syndrome that these entities can portray and give us and stuff. In your mind, that experience that you just shared, was that as physical as you and I, as as anything else that goes on in your life?
Well, when you come back with different feet, I would say it was physical.
How, what was your mind? What were you thinking whenever you came back, like
I was
emotionally and everything?
I was really very disturbed about it. I had taken a friend with me uh, who just happened to be visiting, and I said I have to go to Monroe or West Monroe and do readings. Uh, the bookstore is scheduled about 5 that day, and I said go with me. So he was with me, and he's a witness to how upset afterwards I was. As a matter of fact, I had 2 more readings scheduled for the next day on Sunday, and I was so upset over this, I had to cancel those and go back to Shreveport.
Mm.
So that was it affected me. Yes,
What was what was the other lady's name?
Mary Henry.
Did you ever talk to her? How what was her story
She
like?
went, she uh, she talked to Barbara, and we had planned for me to come up there. We were going to get together and discuss this, but it never happened.
Hmm. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall during that conversation
Yeah.
if it would have happened.
Well,
But it sounds similar. Go
unfortunately,
ahead, Ted. I'm sorry.
it's all right. Unfortunately, Barbara Barkley was has died, but she had recordings of she made recorded live recordings of Mary Henry talking about this, and also me on the phone. And she had a lot of regressions that we did, and now since she's died, I have no idea where they are. There's probably a world of information that I can't even remember.
I wonder if James Bartley could. I know he was really good friends with Barbara also. Or
Well, I wonder if any of her close friends like that besides myself uh, got any of her material if her family released any of it.
Do you know anything about that Fringe? Like about, because I know you're a big Barbara Bartholic fan. You know, I'm a fan of all these giants that led the field in this research, you know, before us. But what do you know anything about, like, do who surely somebody got her research material, something like, have you heard anything about that? Because I know you've done a lot of research when it comes to Barbara and that.
You know, I haven't. I'll reach out to James because it's a great question. I think we might be waiting for some of Karla's material to come out, but I haven't heard anything about Barbara's material. She and her husband were both died close together, yeah, Ted. And so I'm not aware of who all of that went to. Ted would probably know a lot more about that than I would.
Well, I contacted uh, one of her children and inquired about the material and said, "Is there any possibility I can get all my tapes?" And I did this twice. They never responded, so I left it alone. I didn't want to step into their arena where they were uncomfortable. But
Hopefully the material, the tapes and all that, it's still out there somewhere.
yeah,
But
I,
whenever you were explaining that your experience here in Monroe, um, it reminded me of one with my ex-girlfriend. Um, but I don't think that I don't know. I never been regressed or anything, so I don't know. But I don't think that I was having a paranormal type experience. But like I said, I never been regressed, so possibly. But anyways, me and my we were so I came to her one day and I said I had this wild dream, or she actually came to me. She came to me, had this wild dream, and she said we were running through the desert. Um, or she was with this guy. She was with this guy running through the desert, and she was being chased. But she knew that this person she was with was friendly and that they were escaping this person that was, I guess, trying to kill them, whatever. And they went through a house in the in abandoned house out in the desert. And it's been so long since that was been years ago, 15, 20 years ago. But anyways, they went up, hid up underneath a car, and that's basically where it stopped. That she told me that she could see the feet out there, you know, because she was up underneath the vehicle, and that's basically when it stopped. And when she told me this, I'm sure there's a lot more, but I didn't write that stuff down back then. When she told me this, the hair on my back of my neck, my arms, everything, it shook me to my core because it was the same exact dream that I had, the same exact dream that I had, but I was running through the desert with a female. I didn't know who it was. Um, and we were being chased, and we went through a house, the same thing that she explained to me. I think it ended underneath the vehicle, hiding, and that's basically all that I remember. But every little detail, there was a lot more that I'm missing out. But we had the same dream, but we didn't know it was each other. Like I didn't know if it was her. I didn't know who it was, but I could tell it was a female presence. Vice versa, we had the same dream. What do you think about that, Ted?
well, I don't think that was an accident. You had it around the same time. How old were you?
Oh, right now you're talking about then.
Yeah, then when you had the dream.
Now I'm 38. That was probably 20, so 18 years ago. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. She was 19. I was 20. Yeah.
Neither one of you ever reported having a dream or waking up with the fear of anyone drowning.
Not drowning, but I've woke up with a lot of night terrors. I haven't had this dream in a long time, what I'm about to tell you, but I used to wake up a lot with like it was we were in a post-apocalyptic, the dream I would have over at least once a month or once every couple of months, the same dream. I would wake up and the nights, the skies would be during the dream, the skies would be filled with black triangles and they're taking people aboard. Everything's catastrophic. Things are on fire, people screaming. It's almost like the end times. I would have that dream over and over again for years, about once every couple months, but I haven't had it in years. But that's about the only thing I can think of.
Well, I don't think that was just your mind kind of going crazy there. I think you were being fed something uh, that made you have this continuous dream like that. Uh, I think I would say definitely you've been contacted. I think the running in the desert and getting to this empty house that you shared with your friend, I don't think that was an accident. I can't tell you what I think it really means. I'm not sure. Uh, but it seemed to me that both you and her, you were running from something, and the house represented security. And what were you both running from? Were you in the sleeping in the bed together, not trying to be personal, but were you sleeping together when you had these dreams?
No, she was. I just got back. I was military police, Army Reserve, and I
Okay.
just got back from basic training. And she was still living with her parents. She was going to college, so she was still living with her parents, and I was still. Well, I guess I was technically still living with my parents at 20 when I first came back, but I moved out. I think the end of my 20 or 21, but I think I was still living with my parents then too because I was attempting to go to school, but it
Okay.
never worked out.
Gotcha. Well, I don't have the answer for you on why you both had that same dream, but I don't, knowing what I know and what I've experienced, I do not believe for a second it was just coincidental. I think something was messing with you. How many times do you think you saw those triangle shaped vehicles in the sky?
Oh man. And I would like to get your take on that too, Fringe, here in just a moment. Because I don't think we've talked a couple times and I don't think I ever brought that up. Man. I would say early 20s all the way to 38, maybe all the way to I was at least probably 34, 35.
You're not having them now.
Not that I can recall.
Okay.
Not consciously, not that I
Are
can
they
remember.
always identical? Were there any variation in it at all? They were always the same.
It seemed, Ted, to always be the same. It was like this
Well,
doom and gloom type scenario where everybody's being taken by these triangles and everything's on fire, like end times type ordeal.
well, it reminds me of what I've seen in a vision years ago. This was back when I had this first vision. Was back in the 70s, 1970s. I was living in Atlanta, Georgia, and I had this vision where I saw dark clouds, uh, lots of lights, and what appeared to be vehicles uh, in these clouds everywhere in every direction you could see. And on the ground, it looked like bombs had gone off. The vegetation was kind of burned and dead looking.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw coming out of one cloud, one figure, uh, a robed figure. I wasn't close to it, but I saw it descend like in a beam of light down to the ground. And then when it come walking forward, everything behind it turned lush and green and beautiful as it walked forward. And these clouds, they had spotted lights in them that would be like three lights of different colors. making like a triangle. Uh, I don't recall necessarily round ones. I think they were the lights that I saw indicated most of what I was seeing was triangular. So I think what you and I have shared is some apocalyptic thing that's coming in the future, or something just wants us to think that. My question back then was, why show me something like that that I can't do anything about? Any people won't believe me when I tell it. They will dismiss it as a dream or something kind of crazy. So I was never given any tools to go with that really to help people. Did you feel you were given anything that actually would help people benefit from what you saw there?
That's the only thing I know is that's the year when I came back when that 2006 when that's the year I first came across you, Dr. Carla Turner. I was going down the rabbit hole and I was researching these things and then I started having these dreams. So did I get close to something?
Well, you started having the dreams after you started researching Karla and I.
I can't say 100%, but around that same time, I would say 2006 when I was 20 years old.
Uh, well, I would say, in my honest opinion, it's kind of like playing the Ouija board. When you once you play that game, you've opened the door for this to come into your life. And so when you started researching Karla, that came in because that was a subject matter that they're greatly involved in.
Do you think they're intimidated by that research material?
Uh, I don't know if they are anymore or not, but back 20 years ago, 30 years ago, yes, very much so. I think they were because they were not fully prepared themselves for the invasion they were starting on planet Earth.
Hmm. Fringe, I would like to get your take on some of this stuff because
Yeah,
you
I'm
put you
happy to
put things
be.
in a very good perspective. I just love hearing your things on spaces, your spaces that you hold, and the past couple interviews. We've talked about. You put things in a very good perspective. So I'd like to hear your take.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm just happy to be a fly on the wall here, with Ted always. So that is actually one dream I have never had. I've had all the other catastrophic, earth change dreams, my entire life that a lot of different abductees and experiencers have. The only thing I can really say about it is it's very common. A lot of experiencers and abductees have these same visions, the same one with a fleet of ships arriving at the end of the world. I think my husband has seen something very similar to that. And the abduction research shows that sometimes abductees are actually being shown these images on a screen. And these images are being shown almost as propaganda material to say, look, this is what you guys are going to do to the earth. This is what's coming. This is what's happening. But don't worry, once we are in charge, everything's going to be great. So it's just a typical propaganda message. Like Ted is saying, is it actually going to happen? We don't know. Now, there does seem to be some science now behind some changes to our electromagnetic field, and we have the sun, blasting its rays toward us. So could something like this happen? Sure, it could. But what is the purpose of this message? Like Ted is saying, what can we do about it? The climate change that's coming directly from our sun, there's nothing we can do about that. And so is there anything we can do to stop it? I have often thought, are they trying to get us as creators, so to speak? We have a limited creative ability in this realm. Are they trying to get us to actually manifest this? There's just a lot of questions around it, but it's interesting that you've had these dreams because many people have had these same dreams. So you just have to wonder, is this something that's actually going to happen, or is it something they want us to think is going to happen? There are a lot of questions.
Um, yeah, it's just weird how it just stopped, and I guess in a way I'm kind of glad because at first I remember them being kind of these dreams would be kind of terrifying, but then it was almost like I was kind of I know I knew that this is familiar. I'm having the same dream again, you know. So it's almost like I was kind of conscious within the dream. So, but something, Ted, I was wanting to, and you can steer this conversation any way you want to, Ted. Seriously, this just
So,
add
and
like we're just sitting
I'm
around a
open,
campfire or something like that,
yeah, I'm open to talking about whatever pops up that you guys feel to talk about. I do. I just want to support what Fringe here has said. Uh, a lot of people, and I've run across other people besides you and Fringe that have seen some of these things themselves. And I ask that same question every time now. What did you get out of it that you feel is helpful that will help mankind? And nobody really said, well, people don't believe me when I tell it, but it's really stuck in my head. So at this time, I'm supportive of what Fringe is saying. It may be just alien propaganda, where we don't know yet exactly where they're leading us, but I don't trust any of it. I don't trust any of it at all. I have learned not to trust anything they do because they affect all of us in so many different ways. And they do this while we're sleeping. They take us when we're awake. They mess with our lives completely. So I have no reason to put any truth into what you and I have experienced, what any of us have seen with these visions or these dreams. Uh, I keep waiting for somebody to have more that we can say, oh yeah, that is helpful. Yes, I'm going to do this. Yes, I'm going to do that. But nobody ever comes up with that. So anyway, I just want to share that.
I appreciate it. I just don't understand why though, Ted. Like, why do people? Why? If Dr. Carla Turner says that we're getting these, that they can get these visions, almost like a virtual reality scenario within our minds. But why? That's something that's so complexing to me. Is why do they even bother? Are we just pawns on the chessboard? Just
Absolutely, we are. We are.
what does your gut tell you? I know I'm asking you maybe to speculate or not. I don't know, but what does your gut tell you? Like, what? Why are they messing with us? Why are they interfering with our deepest subconscious minds, physically and or mentally, and even in the physical sense, I guess.
Goodness, that's a big one. Uh,
Well, take your time. I just
well, I think that until I come up with something better, I think they're the biblical fallen angels. And as we are told in the Bible, we're told that Satan controls his planet, and so they do control it, and they control everything on it. Why God has allowed this to be this way, I do not know. I can't answer that. I can't speak for God, but I wholeheartedly believe in God. Uh, they are fallen angels, so they are against God. They are against Jesus, and their primary motive is to disrupt everything on planet Earth and control it in a negative way. And then, we have to look at the fact that they're creatures. Uh, I think there's more. I'm not convinced that all of them are creatures of material substance. Some can be ethereal, I suppose. Uh, I don't know enough to be sure about that. But these creatures, some are reptilian, some are what they call the Greys, the Nordics, what have you. Different people tell us that they're all different species of aliens coming from different parts of the universe. I don't know originally where they came from, but I do know this. I have seen many of them on the same ship together. I have had Greys come and take me through the walls of my house and into a ship, and I get on there, and there's reptilians there, and then they're done with me, and I'm on a table, be it having awful things done to me, a Nordic will come in and do something, and you know, I just can't buy that they're all different species that are against each other. I just don't buy any of that at this point. I think they're all working together. I truly do. And I don't think that there are any good ones, except if we find out that God and the true angels are actually aliens too, which is possible in my realm of thinking. We may find they are the good ones. If there are any, they're the good ones. Uh, Flipping back to something we mentioned earlier, does anybody know approximately what year Betty and Barney Hill were abducted there in New England? Wasn't it in the early 50s?
Was it 57, 58?
Okay.
Maybe?
All right. I don't know uh, the aliens' involvement in humanity to the degree it is today. I don't know that it was happening like that back then. There was the Roswell crash. Supposedly, after that, President Eisenhower had a meeting with them at some base and agreed for them to start abducting humans as long as there was no harm done to anybody, and in exchange for technology that would help us. Now, I don't know how true that is, but my gut feeling tells me it was true. After that, people started having, like Betty and Barney Hill, started having abductions and reporting it. And then we move on into the 50s, more of it. We move on into the 60s, more of it, and so on and on. And now it's very common. People worldwide are acknowledging I've been touched in some way by these creatures. And so I think that if Eisenhower did this and had that agreement, they they falsified what they were actually going to do. He gave them permission, nobody was to be hurt, but yet they lied. They didn't honor that agreement because they are hurting people. They've hurt me. They've hurt friends. They've messed with our lives in a very negative way. Fringe comments.
So, and I was wanting to, and I've been contemplating that, and you can comment, Fringe, what you just said, Ted. I've asked many research. I've been podcasting since 2010, and I've asked that on and off, especially the past couple of years. That the question of kind of relate to what you just said. Why did it seem like it kind of happened within somewhat the early part of the 20th century? 1950s or 40s onward. And my thing is, Fringe, and I think we may have discussed this last time, but did some type, maybe occultists like Aleister Crowley, Parsons, other just armchair occultists? Are they doing these rituals to conjure these things into existence, almost like a portal? They're using their human form as an energy beacon, almost like a portal to maybe manifest into the world. I don't know. That's just me speculating because just like Ted said, that's something I've been kind of contemplating. Like, why did all this kind of happen? Like, mostly, I know we've had accounts throughout time of little cave drawings of things, but it seemed like we've just been bombarded with this, especially since occultism and these ritualistic rituals started kind of taking place in really the early part of the 1900s to now, you know.
Yeah, I think a lot of people believe that the Nazis, got involved in this and they were the first ones to get this technology, at least in modern day, because it has gone on for centuries, if not thousands of years. So starting with the Nazis, and there are tons of people who believe that Parsons and Crowley and all of them, opened up portals. You have Lamb, you have all of that lore. I don't think we really know. I don't think we know why, the uptick is happening. Maybe people are just more aware. Maybe it's now easier to talk about. I did hear someone say the other day that, oh, abductions are slowing down. They're not happening anymore. And it's just absolute nonsense that they're not happening anymore. People start saying that all the abducting grays have been evicted from the planet and the Galactic Federation is coming to save us. Absolute nonsense. All of this is just propaganda to get our eyes off the ball. If anyone knows me, they know I agree with Ted's assessment here. I think ultimately we are looking at a battle for the human soul, for the ultimate destiny of the human soul. There's still some mystery about it. We might not understand every single thing there is to understand, but that's the bottom line. And the thing with these creatures is they are so incredibly manipulative and deceptive. They string us along, really wherever we're at in our lives, they come at us with some kind of deception. And I've said before, people like me and Ted, and maybe even you, we don't know what's going on with you, Michael, abductees, experiencers. I think it's all of us. It's the entirety of the human race. We are all experiencers to one degree or another. It's really just a matter of awareness because we are being acted upon at all times by these creatures in an unseen realm, and we're just completely unaware of it. So, I don't think abductions have stopped. I think they've gone up. I think if you look at even David Jacobs' work, there are some statistics to suggest that it actually goes up at the same percentage of the population going up. And so there's nothing stopping, there's nothing slowing down. It's happening to millions of people worldwide in all different types of cultures. And here we are today, at least able to talk about it through technology on the internet, which is just so incredible. I am incredibly honored to be here with Ted. Ted affected me and my story personally, and I'm just excited to help him, make sure he gets his story out there because it's so important for people to understand. I would love to hear more, if you're okay with it, Michael and Ted, we were talking about Barbara. And Ted, we had a conversation not too long ago, maybe about a week ago, about how when Masquerade of Angels had come out or was about to be published, Barbara and Karla and Ted were actually threatened. And not too long after that, Barbara and Karla were dead, and Ted actually went into hiding. And so this is why Ted's message is so incredibly important, because 20 years ago, at least, they did not want this story out there. And that's why it's so important to get this story out there, to get his opinions out there, to hear everything there is to hear. Because if it was important then, it's definitely important now. And I think the experiencer in the abductee community needs to hear from Ted because we have so many experiencers who are falling for the deception of these entities. They believe everything is good, that we're ascending to 5D, that these entities are here, to upgrade our consciousness. And so this is a bit of a ramble to just say thank you so much, Ted, for being here. And please tell us as much of your story as you possibly can while we have you.
Well, I would do that. As you're talking, a couple of things rushed through my head. I would like to say, I was one thing that if there's anything I want to get out there, I want people to be aware or stop and think. We're dealing with non-human entities. They are creatures in comparison to humans. We see them as creatures. What do you think reptiles eat?
Other creatures.
You think they're going to sit down at a dinner table and have baked potatoes and steamed broccoli with a little cheese on it or something? No, they're meat eaters. They're flesh eaters, and we are their garden. We are their food supply. I was taken to the underground base at Julesy. We had one of the most horrible experiences of all that I've had is I witnessed people being brought in that were in a zombie state. They had been done that to them. I saw men, women, children being hung up on meat hooks and slaughtered, and their body parts where they were dismembered and their body parts were packed in crates, and these crates were then moved into small UFOs and were taken out to alien colonies for them to feed upon. I saw this. I witnessed it. But you don't hear other people talking about it. And I think probably this is one of the things that I had to go into hiding about because of the threats. This when I first realized this or saw this was working with Barbara, and this was back in the early 1990s. Stephen Greer, I listened to a podcast he did this morning. He said the aliens have been protecting us from annihilating ourselves for 80 years with atomic bombs, etc. They're looking out for us. I wanted to say, Stephen, wake up. They're just protecting their next meal. They don't, yeah, they may keep us from blowing ourselves up. They don't want to lose their garden. So there are different ways to look at this. But, I don't want to just create a horror story that terrifies people, but at the same time, I'm trying to be realistic. These creatures feed on human bodies. I have witnessed and seen up close the praying mantis dismember and eat little children and babies, rip their cavity chest open and feed on the organs inside their little bodies. But yet, some researchers say they're operating the nursery for these children that are hybrids. I don't buy any of that. Well, the mantis eats other insects.
Yeah.
And so it's a flesh eater, and they eat the blood off of these other insects that they kill. So taking the blood or the organs, because you got to realize these mantis that doing this, they're not the little tiny thing you see on a bush outside. They're 7 feet tall with in spindly, and so they're going to require more than eating a caterpillar or something like that on a leaf. So they're feeding on these children. And now this is where I wanted to go with these clones is to support of what I'm saying. If these aliens are taking all these humans and these children uh, and they're consuming them. People, if with it would be so many, it would be just thousands. The world would already be in a state of panic. So here we go with more deception, and it also shows just how brilliant some of these alien programs are. They created an ability to replicate a human in a fast, rapid method called a clone. And this is why another reason they're after the soul is because they're after the flesh of the original body. But if they create a clone and make it realistic, they have to put the same memory back in there. They did that to me, and I have witnessed them doing it to others through these odd looking, strange looking headphones that they put on you. And it's all they enter this information. It's almost painful sometimes. It's going into your brain so fast. But they've created the human brain to be none other than a biological computer. So it's just like downloading something on the computer. It just works on the same principle. Uh, but then they take these souls. They've managed to get our souls and put them in little black boxes. I've seen them do it. They did it to me. And they hold it there temporarily until the clone's ready. And when the clone's ready, they program the same memory back into it. And they take this same soul and they reinstall it in the clone's body. And then they have a little room where they put the clone in where they file down the fingernails and they make sure everything looks the same, and so that nobody would notice. And then they put this clone back into its bed, and it wakes up the next day. And sometimes they're feeling kind of poorly, drained of energy, headachy, a little confusion, felt like they had some horrible nightmare, but can't quite remember what it was. But they have no idea what has happened to them the night before. And so if they don't work this program, then the whole world's going to catch on with millions of people disappearing all the time. So it's really a very sophisticated and brilliant program. It has fooled for humanity for years. And we're still in deception. Comments?
Sure.
I'm just
Go
enjoying
ahead.
hearing you talk, Ted, because I want you to share as much as you can, man. But if
Oh,
Fringe wants to comment, go ahead.
No, I just want to hear Ted. I'll back you up, Ted, on that. I mean, it's all throughout the abduction research. This sounds like science fiction. It's something that sounds ridiculous, this idea of clones, but it's all over the place. It's everywhere. I have been transferred out of my body as so many times I can't even count. It's a thing. Take it or leave it. I just want to hear everything Ted has to say today.
well, we can
Same
do,
here.
we, we can do more interviews with you today.
Okay.
I'm getting older, and I'm willing to talk about anything that I can to get it out there because I don't know how much longer I will be around. I'm 82 now, so and I'm hoping I'm around to live to be 100, but I've been battling poor health now for several years here, and so we don't know where it's going, but I'm okay with it. I'm okay with whatever happens. Now, uh, something popped into my mind. It was in Masquerade of Angels, but uh, since it popped into my head, let's talk about it. I back during the late '60s, I was living in a house in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, with a good friend, and his godmother had died, and uh, he was allowed to live in her house until he got his PhD at the University of Alabama, which he did. But I lived there for a short period of time. But during this event, I lived on the second floor of the house. He lived on the first floor. But what his godmother started appearing to me and giving me instructions of things she wanted me to do to help him stay there and be comfortable and get his degrees at university. And so I shared this with him, and we were all excited about her ghost coming and talking to me. And of course, the very idea of a UFO back then was absurd to me. I didn't know that if somebody said they'd seen one, I'm not sure if I would have believed them. But but at any rate, I'm going to jump forward to Barbara Bartley. I asked Barbara one day when I was there with her, put me under. I want to look at that event where the godmother came and talked to me. And I said, something about it has always bothered me. So she put me under, and under hypnosis, I saw that the godmother that appeared to me at the foot of my bed that night was a hologram. And I saw the operators of that hologram were two grays. So I just wanted to throw out that more deception to all these people that may be listening, that are really into talking to ghosts, that are really into believing your deceased relative came and talked to you. Maybe they did. I'm not saying that that doesn't happen, but I would really question it if you're being deceived or not, because that deception at that time in my life benefited my friend, and I'm staying in the house with him there, benefited him, and it also benefited me, it seemed, in a way, because it propelled me into wanting to learn more about my gift to be able to talk to the dead, my gift to improve my psychic ability. So all these things came out of that deception. But when Barbara put me under years later to look at it, I saw the grand deception there, and I saw how that manipulation moved our lives forward. To me, it's just an example of how they manipulate our lives and control us. I made choices based on that deception. Amen.
I was just writing down, you said the grand deception, because that's probably going to go within the title because it's very, very true. But I could ask questions, but just like Fringe says, I really do. I mean it. You're here because I want to hear your story, anything, things that you may have not discussed before. Things maybe you've talked kind of privately with Dr. Karla Turner, Barbara Bartholic, or
I'll tell you what the grand deception is going to be. The grand deception is going to be one day when thousands and thousands of UFOs appear visibly to the world, and they're going to land, and our deceased loved ones, our parents, our grandparents, the little children we may have lost, little brother, little sister, all come off and tell us we have come to save you because the world should end. You must come with us. And everybody's going to fight to get on board. They have no idea that these are clones and that they have been created and manipulated mentally, and they actually believe what they're telling you. But it's all lies. If it happens in my lifetime, regardless of what happens here on planet Earth physically, I'm staying. I'm not getting on board and become part of that human processing to feed millions of aliens. Because if they took millions or billions of humans off the earth that way, do you honestly think they can take you out there in space and take care of you? How are they going to feed billions of humans? They're not. We're going to become dinner if we go. I really believe that wholeheartedly.
And I don't want to make this about me, but you said, you mentioned something about the with the Grand Deception with all these ships in the sky. Makes you wonder if that, when I told you the recurring dreams I had for years,
Right.
was a possible.
I thought of that too, but
Makes you wonder if there's a possible.
I wasn't ready to mention it yet.
It makes you wonder who else are having these types of dreams. It's just they don't come forward. They don't have a podcast like this. They don't have a spaces like Fringe does,
I
on
think I
Twitter.
probably need to turn that light back on. I'm getting kind of dark.
Okay. So, so what do you think about that, Fringe? About what he said or anything like that?
Yeah, I totally agree. I actually posted not too, well, it's quite some time ago now, and it just says, I'm going to say this only once, don't get on the ships. And,
I heard you
with
say
the
that.
dreams of these ships coming, it's going to be a mass deception. There's so many different ways it can go. How it will actually happen, I don't know. That, there could be a few different options. They might have a plan A, B, plan C if they're smart. But whatever it is and however it's going to go, I just ask people, please just stop and think for a second and don't just buy this deception, whatever it's going to be. They show up as our saviors. They show up to save us. They say, get on the ships. They send us to some, crazy locations to get Wi-Fi because we're in the middle of a civil breakdown. Maybe they stop a nuke during World War III. I don't know exactly how it's going to go, but I 100% agree with Ted. Don't get on the ships. Don't go to their.
But Jesus said he's coming back. You know, he didn't tell us to go get on ships. He said he's coming back to earth. So I'll wait here.
No, you're exactly right, Ted. So I think the difference that's really important for people to understand, because there are Christian influencers out there right now, and I know this is near to Ted's heart, so I'll speak on it. There are Christian influencers out there trying to convince people that Jesus was an alien. I absolutely disagree with that. If Jesus was an alien, we're in trouble. That's what I think. I think that the aliens will come back pretending to be Jesus. They could put on some kind of fake rapture. I mean, who knows what they're going to do? All I do know is they are masters of deception and manipulation. I did a space the other day where we went over the differences, and the difference is going to be when Christ himself returns, every knee shall bow. It doesn't say you're going to have to go get on a spaceship or to meet him on a spaceship or to meet your dead relatives on a spaceship. It doesn't say that. So, just be cautious to anyone in your audience who might be Christian, might follow the religion. I do believe there is a great deception coming. Just like Ted says, I don't know how it will unfold, but I won't be getting on the ships if I have a choice. I can tell you that.
I know they've been programming us through Hollywood and the movies and industry for years. It kind of reminds me of V, the TV show V, you know, where they're disguising as all righteous and all knowing and benevolent beings that are here to save humanity. But at the end of the day, you know, uh, they have much more malevolent purposes. And also Arthur C. Clarke's Childhood's End. I don't know if you've seen the TV show, but it was at the end he comes out as the devil. He has actual horns and a tale, makes you wonder how much do they really know, that they're not actually telling us, but they're telling us, through these films.
And I can just speak to a rumor. A lot of things go around the community, but I was told that the CIA was told to watch V to see how it was about to go down. So there you have it. Of course I did. I went ahead and rewatched it. I think I had watched it a long time ago, but at that time I didn't think anything of it, right? I just thought it was some creepy alien show, but man.
Watch Childhood's End. The book is huge, but just watch I think it's the miniseries or a movie. I think it's the miniseries, like 3 or 4, 6 episodes. Childhood's End. It'll it's like it'll blow your mind. But Ted, I want to hear what you have to say
About which?
Man, like I said, the floor is yours. I'm just
I'm trying to get this light.
That actually looks really good right there.
Is that okay?
That looks really good. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I just want to, like Fringe said, I want to hear more of you. I've it truly is a treat and honor and privilege just to have you here. So I just want to hear whatever.
Let me throw something at you to do sometime if you have the opportunity.
What's that?
Years past, there were a number of channelers available, and I think there was a very famous one out of the state of Washington, one out of New Orleans. I forget, but they published books. They went on TV, and they would. Anyway, the point I'm getting at is I was interested back in those days. It was before I knew anything about UFOs. But I bought tapes from these different channels if they were selling, maybe $4.95 back then or something like that. But I had several of them. Unfortunately, I lost those tapes. They were severely damaged in a hurricane. But after I got with Barbara and started doing regressions and I started learning more, something told me one day to get those tapes out. I was living in Shreveport at the time and listen to them. Amazingly to me, the voice that was controlling these humans that were channeling was all identical and all had the same accent. You could scarcely distinguish the difference between them. And they all sounded just a tiny bit mechanical. And if you ever get an opportunity to make any comparison like that, I think you will see that. And when I was threatened on the telephone there in Shreveport, that if I didn't put a zipper on my mouth, something bad would happen to me and my grandchildren, who I had custody of at the time, which is what scared me into kind of disappearing for years. The voice that did that threatening to me was identical to these voices on these channeling tapes. So all you listeners who are heavy into channeling, you really need to do some personal investigation on what you're allowing to step into your body and talk through you. It may not be what you think.
I'm afraid to do anything like that. The Ouija board, channeling, or anything. I'm afraid to know what may latch on to me, you know.
Well, I'm just trying to open people up, getting people to think. Instead of buying everything, because it sounds pretty, the old saying, all that glitters is not gold.
I think it's important for people to understand Ted's background. If your audience isn't already familiar, I don't know if you're going to do an intro here, Michael. to understand that Ted was a psychic medium. He was heavily involved in this world. And so he has a lot of experience with spirit guides and this type of stuff. So if you're going to listen to anyone say, hey, I realized my spirit guides were a deception, or I realized, that this ghost was a deception, or, that they're downloading past life information into our heads on the ships, listen to Ted. He's got the experience. He's been there. Now, if someone wants to think, okay, maybe it's not all channelers, maybe it's not all aliens, maybe there's some good mantis. Okay, you're free to think that, but at least have an open enough mind to listen to someone like Ted, who has the experience, who was involved in this world, and who is able to take a step back and realize that his entire life was a deception. It hurts the ego to realize your entire life was a deception, and yet he's willing to come here and speak to us about it. This is a privilege. And people, please just open up your minds and just ask yourself, is it possible that these channelers are deceiving us, that the aliens might be deceiving us? They might not have our best interest in mind. Maybe they're not ascending us to 5D. Maybe these clones are not good for us. Just open your mind and ask yourself, is it possible? That's all I ever ask. And I really appreciate, that Ted, that you're here, just expanding the audience and getting your story out there.
Well, if they were here for our best interest, don't you believe, using just common sense, that by now they would have let our government know that they were here out of love? And the government is not going to distinguish or recognize. I mean, when you say they're not going to recognize any truth in alien activity or anything unless they're absolutely certain it's good. And they've never gotten any proof. Supposedly, in crash sites, they've taken some graves and taken care of them for years. I've heard these rumors. I don't know if it's true or not. But still, after all this, they deny the existence. We're not given any hope or anything out of it. They won't even give us a clue that it's real. And I think using common sense, if these beings, these creatures in these ships were actually here for our best interest, I don't think villages in Brazil, the people would be terrified to even step out their front door at night because they're being zapped. I don't think people like me would be terrified for years to go to sleep at night because something's going to come and get you, and there's not a darn thing you can do about it. There wouldn't be people like Annie that's been messed with for so many years of her life. The torture this lady has been through. None of that would be going on if they were here for our best interest. If they were here for our best interest, they wouldn't sneak in our bedrooms at night while we're sleeping and take us. They would land, come out, talk to the mayor of the city, the chief of police, whatever, and do their business openly and honestly if they were here for our best interest. So I don't think any of us anywhere have any really proof or convincing information that will tell us if they're truly here for our best interest. Those that think that they are believing most likely deception and lies. They don't realize they are, but they're not asking themselves the right question.
So hopefully, and you said maybe we can make this be, we have a few more minutes left, Ted, but hopefully I can get you back on. You said maybe we can do a couple parts of this, you know. Um, is
I,
there,
I would be okay with that.
I really appreciate
If
it.
Annie will come with me, she's my sidekick.
What do you say,
And
Fringe?
I would love to. I can't express how much Ted's own story actually helped me when I was lost and thinking I was the only one out there. I will show up with Ted anywhere, any place, anytime. Just give me the date and time. I'll be there.
I will. And something I've been really wanting to ask you, Ted. So since your years of, you know, since we're winding down here, since your conversations with Dr. Carla Turner, Barbara Bartholic, and since for that time when you last spoke to them, you know, Dr. Carla Turner in the 90s and whenever it was with Barbara, your knowledge on what we're dealing with and maybe more experiences and things you've dealt with over time has expanded. Um, I'm sure your knowledge and intellect on the phenomena is more than what it was back then. If you could go back in time, of course, I'm asking you to speculate, or not speculate, but what would you tell them now if you could go back? If they just appeared to you right now, Barbara or Dr. Carla Turner, what would you say to them? What would you ask them? Is there anything maybe you would change or just add to or ask them that you maybe wished you would have asked them back then?
I can't think of anything I would ask them right then, but I would give them some advice, knowing what I know now. And that advice would be like to Karla, I would tell Karla to back off, your life is in danger. And I would say the same thing to Barbara Bartholic. I would warn them, knowing where I am today, and I could go back to the early 90s, knowing what I know now, I would hug them and love them and tell them we need to back up because our lives are in danger. And we could say, well, how come my life is not in danger now? I I waited many years before I stepped back out and was willing to talk about this. But I waited until there was just lots of information already out there in many of the same topics that I talk about, but from different people. Uh, so I felt more comfortable, and also I felt like at my age, you know, I owe it to you and Fringe and anybody else listening. I feel like I owe it to you to at least try to expand your thinking and open doors for a new way of thinking. Just don't buy the roses they offer, because those roses really have thorns in them. So that's what I would tell those two girls. I would warn them. Karla, Dr. Karla Turner, had the men in black show up at her house in their black car and their little suits like you have seen portrayed in the movie Men in Black. They actually look similar, and they came to the door. She opened the door, and I don't. Carla told me what they said, but I don't remember exactly the words. But it's something similar to what they had said to me on the phone, if whatever that was, it threatened me. Uh, but she looked at them, and her answer to them was, I'm not going to say it, but I'm going to give you the initials. She looked at them and said F-O. And shortly after that, she had this mysterious fog episode with her husband on this mountaintop, which he said nothing happened. She said she believed something did happen, and I believe something did happen to her. Not long after that, she was diagnosed with an out of control breast cancer of her life. She went to leading cancer center. I'm not sure. I don't remember which one, but I think it was MD Anderson in Houston. I'm not sure. And they told her to go home and get prepared because that type of cancer, there was absolutely nothing they could do about it. She lived a very short time. Barbara lasted for years, but Barbara still was doing regression. Barbara was still talking, doing an interview occasionally. Uh, Barbara and I talked almost daily. We were the best of buddies. And she talked me into moving to Tulsa so that we could start doing hypnotic regressions on me 2 or 3 times a week or whenever we could work it in. I was having to work. I had a job back in those days. And so I finally agreed to do it reluctantly. But it was no time at all after that. Just we're talking about weeks, maybe 3 or 4 weeks after I agreed to do it, and I started making arrangements to move. She was in this horrible automobile accident that killed her husband, and then a year later killed her. So I never made it up there. So I feel like, in a way, doing Masquerade of Angels with Karla brought on her death. I feel like, in a way, going to Tulsa to work with Barbara to get more information out of me may have accelerated her death. Maybe they put this ideas in my head to just prey on my guilt or whatever, but I feel I can't help but feel like these people may still be alive today if I had not gotten involved in their lives, because I gave them different things to look at, like I've shared with you today. They got out of me what came out of me and my neighborhood abduction there in Shreveport changed the entire belief of Karla and Barbara. So that's information I really haven't shared with the public, but I'm letting you know how my personal feelings are today.
Well, thank you very much, Ted. Um, it like I didn't said it a few times, and I know Fringe same way. It's truly a treat, honor, privilege. Um, and with your blessings, and of course Fringe popping on too, love to do another part down the road. Maybe next month. I don't have to look at my schedule and everything. But any last thoughts, Fringe, before we round it up for this time?
Yeah, I have a quote here from Barbara, and it says, "Those of us who reveal the darker side risk our lives on a daily basis." And I think, Ted, that I understand the guilt that you feel. And yes, is it partially manipulated? Maybe. We know that they'll take advantage of something like that. But I think that those two women were very brave. And I think regardless of your participation or what you wanted, they were going to go forward. And they knew exactly the threat that they were under. They knew their lives were being threatened. The talks we've had, you've said that Karla knew that she was purposely taken out. I'm actually familiar with a backstory there. of an abductee who actually saw Karla being injected with the cancer cells on board. And then we had a long discussion about the accident, Barbara's accident. It was very suspicious. There's a backstory there. If Ted ever wants to share it, it's up to him. But regardless of you, Ted, I think they would have pushed forward. I think they would not have stopped until they got as close to the truth as they possibly could. So I hate to see you take that guilt forward. I think that they played a really big part in showing this dark side. I mean, I have had extensive pushback by the phenomenon for speaking out against it. I know you have also, Ted. Why we're still here, I don't know. But yeah, these two ladies aren't. And part of the reason
Can
why
I
even
say something right quick?
oh, jump in, Ted. I'm rambling. Jump in.
It's all right, but I'll lose it. I don't keep
Yep.
things right in my brain without losing them unless I talk about it. So excuse the interruption. But how do I say it? I think what protected me when I was taken to Dulce Underground and I witnessed the humans being slaughtered, what protected me from the praying mantis when I stood close to them, observing what they were doing to these babies. They were not aware that I was there. I was covered in some type of shield, and there was a force with me that wouldn't let me see what it looked like. And I can't help but believe that those are the good angels using me to help dig out some of the real truths of what's really going on behind this grand deception on our planet. That's all. I just wanted to point that out. And I think the same thing with you, Fringe. In spite of what all's been done to you, something has protected you. You're still alive, girl. You're still talking about it. They haven't killed you yet. That's all I wanted to say.
Well,
Oh, Ted. Yeah, and by the way, they've actually told me that I had cancer last year, right in about the summer of last year. They scared the ever-living crap out of me, because they told me I had liver cancer.
Oh my.
So, I mean, these are games that they play, and yeah, you're right. We're still here for a reason, and we're likely just being protected.
this is the reason why I do this podcast, why I've been talking to so many people that are still with us and no longer with us since 2010, is to document things like this that Fringe has to say, and the magnificent story and experiences that you have shared, and new things that you're willing to share, Ted. This is my ultimate goal in life, is to talk to as many people as I can. I just want to document, so that I know there's other podcasts out there, but I want to document it on my end, and just get the information out there, and hopefully you can live on the stuff the research and the experiences that you talk about, Ted, in your conversations you had with Dr. Karla Turner, Barbara Bartholic. And I want that to live on. Legacies, keeping the legacies alive when it comes to try to understand people that's come before us. I really do think it's our goal in life to try to keep it going. Don't let it die off, to keep these. And will we get to the truth one day? I think so. I can be pessimistic sometimes because we are dealing with a dark topic, but I'm very optimistic, and that's the reason why I do this podcast, is just to have brilliant minds like the both of you, Ted and French. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and hopefully we can have another part 2 down the road. So thank you. Thank you to the both of you.
Well, thank you for allowing me to speak on your program. I appreciate that opportunity.
You too, French.
Thank you both. I can't wait for next time.